And joining me now, economist Richard Dennis from the Australian Institute. Really nice to see you, Richard. You just saw there firsthand what some of these families are going through. With respect, does the RBA know what it's doing?
It knows exactly what it's doing. It knows the pain that it's causing for these people. That is the plan. By increasing the cost of interest, by reducing people's disposable incomes, the Reserve Bank has teams of economists to estimate exactly how much these people will spend less on other groceries. This is the plan.
I mean, the thing is, I'm sure they're not sitting around a table trying to ruin our lives. They must believe this is going to work. Do you think it will?
Well, they're obsessed with controlling inflation. Right? They don't want Australia to have high inflation. They'd like inflation to be 2 to 3%. And in their minds, doing this to us now, forcing this bit of medicine down our throats, will be good for us in the long run. Well, it's not very good for the families we just saw, and given that the reason prices are high is a war in the Ukraine or COVID supply chain problems in China, pulling on their interest rate lever isn't really going to lower those prices. So they know the cost, they know the pain, they think it's worth it, but they're making that decision on behalf of those families.
They think it's worth it. When does it work?
Well, it does work ultimately. If people are scrimping and saving, they buy less things, and then shops find it harder to increase the price of things.
But you're seeing who it impacts, though, aren't we? And
absolutely.
And it's not those who are going out who can probably still afford a luxury car or fancy clothes.
That's right.
You saw David and Belinda there. They're renting. He's just taken a second job and they can't afford food.
That's right. So we know that rents are rising faster than average. We know that medicines, we know that electricity, these essentials are rising even faster than average. So yes, the Reserve Bank knows how much pain they're in, but not everyone's in the same amount of pain. And the Reserve Bank knows that. So for low income earners who have no discretionary spending, they're just spending all their money on essentials, they're experiencing higher cost of living increases than high income earners. And, you know, the group affected most is older women. Older women in retirement are seeing their cost of living rise a lot faster than I am. Their incomes are lower and their bills are rising faster than mine.
Look, you do have inflation sitting at 7-8%, so something needs to be done. You don't want to see that become entrenched. But is there anything else they can do other than just raise interest rates, and which impacts those who can least afford it?
Yes, there's lots they can do. The first thing is they don't have to increase interest rates. The law doesn't tell them they have to deliver 2 to 3% inflation. There's plenty of economists, myself included, Nobel Prize winner Joe Stiglitz was in Australia last year saying, look, these are unusual times. Just accept that inflation's a bit higher than average now. Don't panic. So the Reserve Bank doesn't have to react the way it does, but it wants to. It knows what it's doing. But then there's lots of things the government can do to control inflation. The government can directly control the price of medicine, the price of public housing, the price of public transport. There's lots of prices that the government controls. Childcare. And it's easy to lower the cost of living directly, which would lower inflation, help the low income earners more. But yeah, we're kind of obsessed with using interest rates.
But going to that point you just raised, if the government steps in too much, and you're talking about perhaps tax breaks or handouts, isn't that almost a double-edged sword, because people then spend more money and inflation rises? Possibly,
yes. But we've got $250 billion worth of tax cuts heading our way, the stage 3 tax cuts. Those tax cuts won't go to the people we just saw. They'll go to the highest income earners. We know this. Literally, people earning over $180,000 a year will get the biggest tax cuts. So we could give tax cuts to high income earners, or we could make childcare and medicine and public transport cheaper for everybody. If we do both, well, that might drive inflation. But if we're not worried about the $250 billion cost of the stage 3 tax cuts, well, surely we could afford to actually lower the prices of essentials.
I just wonder, when we look at interest rates go up, what is the cost that we're willing to accept? Is it people losing their homes? We saw there Ankit, he bought just before May, so right before interest rates came in. He said he would never have bought had he known. The reason he thought interest rates were going to stay low is because the RBA governor told him they would until at least 2024.
Well, that's right. So he was misled. And the head of the RBA effectively said interest rates won't go up. So unfortunately, people took them at face value, and now on an average mortgage are paying $900 a month in extra interest. This time last year, interest rates, a lot of people had an interest rate starting with a 2. Now you've got people paying interest rates that start with a 5, even a 6. So this is a huge change, and people took the RBA governor at his word, and it's imposing enormous pain on them.
As you know, you're going to have about 800,000 people come off fixed-rate mortgages this year. ANZ's been the first one to pass on the full interest rate rise. We'll wait and see what the others do. I guess my last question is, have you got any good news for us, Richard?
Well, yes, some banks are very quick to pass on these interest rate rises. For people with $1 million in the bank, lucky them, their interest rates might go up. Look, for most people, unfortunately, no, the Reserve Bank's actually said more interest rates likely to come. But if you're earning over $180,000 a year, stage 3 tax cuts coming next year. So that's good news.
OK, good news for the rich is what
you're telling me.
Good
news for the rich.
Thanks for joining us, Richard. Appreciate it.